Tony,
Yes,
are you still on CTAB?
I am still on CTAB until next month, apparently now.
There's too much background noise for me to hear you.
Sorry about that. I'll type it in.
Can you just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down? Are you still on CTAB?
Yes,
Okay, so then you're still a rep here. Are you about to be off of CTAB?
yes. I'm about to be off. Yes,
Date?
maybe next month.
Okay, so that's why you've applied to be at large.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, but you're
I
currently
honestly
on
didn't
CTAB.
expect. I didn't
And-
expect to still be on CTAB today, but they haven't been able to replace me, so they pushed back the term limit an extra couple months.
Okay, so you're still on CTAB, therefore you're still here and voting.
Correct. I
Okay.
think next week they're supposed to vote on my replacement for PPRTA.
Okay,
I think.
so you're good for today.
Okay.
Hey, Rick, this is Dave Zelenock. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Same topic, talking about still being on CTAB. I did get verbal confirmation yesterday from El Paso County that the Board of County Commissioners supposedly, haven't seen this in writing yet, supposedly though did give me the green light, imagine that, so I can torture you in the group for another couple of years or so. So I think that the reappointment, again, verbal confirmation only, has been confirmed by the Board of County Commissioners.
So I heard about 50% of that, Dave. So you said the Board of County Commissioners approved you for renewal?
Yeah, can you imagine that?
Sure.
What's wrong with them? No, kidding.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they're supposed to be sending a letter out to provide a written confirmation, but that was at least verbally, so I can attend today with a clean, clear conscience.
Great. I'll look forward to receiving that.
And hello to you. Haven't seen you in a while. Pleasure seeing you again.
Oh, hi. Well, I don't know if the paperwork is finished, but I might be joining you again. I'm not sure.
Great. We would look forward to that.
Thank you.
And it looks like we have a pair of Anns today. Ann Nichols, hello to you again there, young lady. Nice to see you as well.
Thanks, Dave. Nice seeing you also.
Nice to see all of you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's about 4 minutes or so after 1. So I want to welcome everyone. And it looks like from those that are online and those in the room that we have a quorum. So and Rick, I'm the only one that's on the bubble today.
Correct. You can vote for now. We're waiting to see
Like
if,
my vote counts, right?
we're waiting to see if Stephen Hart and Jim Moore join us.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So let me just read the purpose statement for the Citizens Advisory Committee. The primary objective of the CAC is to ensure the capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the voters at the November 2nd, 2004, November 6th, 2012, and November 7th, 2017 ballot measures are accomplished with PPRTA funds. The committee reports directly to the PPRTA Board of Directors. All right, so yes, ma'am.
Just a quick housekeeping reminder, make sure when making a motion to state your name so that we record it and have that for the minutes. And when you're in the room, make sure to turn your microphone on to speak. You'll know that it's on when it glows red, and to turn it on is the face with the lines coming off of it. Thank you.
All right. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Any changes to the agenda?
Tom, second.
Rev didn't turn his mic on, but he made a motion to approve. I know he's hard-headed and who has seconded? Tom Viers, but thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Now, the agenda is approved as presented. Thank you, Rev and Tom. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Does anyone on the committee or online have any comments, public comments that not on the agenda? Seeing no hands or anyone in the room, anyone in the audience, of which we have none. So we'll, thank you very much. Approval of the minutes for the November 3rd, 2021 meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Jim, I would like to make a motion to amend those minutes.
Okay, Larry.
If you look at the item number 1, call to order, it shows that the meeting was called to order at 1:36 p.m. I don't think that is correct. I think it was shortly after 1 o'clock. I'm not sure exactly what time. Rick, you?
106.
1:06. Yeah, typo error.
Okay, thank you, Larry, for that attention to detail. Would you like to make a motion to approve with that amendment?
Yes, I would like to move to approve the minutes of the November 3rd, 2021 Citizens Advisory Committee meeting as amended and approved.
And Joan, second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I guess I should go back and ask, is everybody approved the agenda, say aye? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Didn't hear anything, but I didn't do that formal step, so shame on me. All right. Financial reports, Miss Beverly.
Good afternoon, CAC members. So for September, we received 13,098,000, which was 1,265,000 over the budget, or 10.7%. So with 3 months remaining, we are 7 million over the amended budget for 2021. And then on the second page, compared to last September's actual, we were ahead by 17.1%, or 1.9 million, and ahead year-to-date 20 million. Are there any questions regarding the financials?
A comment, any questions by anybody? Just a comment, this is a good news story and it tracks with the trend lines of other years, only over the last couple of years. But this is a great story that as we begin to transition into extension and reapproval of RTA 3, or as we start that messaging, this is a great story in terms of how we've received the money and what we're doing with it. And that revenue is the basis of what we're able to do. So great story. And let's just not forget that as we start the messaging.
Jim,
Thank you, Beth.
Jim,
And- Yes, Tom.
I'm wondering if consumer prices are up 7+%. Are we sort of baking that into future numbers then? Because if it's up 7%, you should be collecting the equivalent amount more in sales tax.
Right now, we're collecting more than 7%.
And we've got artificial infusion of money right now.
And there's different reasons, but I know that the member governments are increasing their estimates based on what they're seeing going on, and the contracts are probably more than were anticipated a year or two ago.
Are you also, member governments, are you also seeing the labor cost and materials cost going up at a higher rate for future projects?
I can speak on Gail Sturdivant with the City of Colorado Springs. I can speak on what we've seen so far. So we've kind of had a weird situation over the past 12 to 18 months in the construction industry where we had some actually lower bids than expected. And we've had a fair amount of bids where we're getting anywhere from 6 or 7 bidders, where I've had a cluster of bids coming in at the engineer's estimate, and every construction contract we've awarded in the past year and a half has been slightly below the engineer's estimate. But what we're hearing is the supply chain issues, labor issues that we know are going to be driving things up. And we have a bunch of bids getting ready to open in the next 6 months that we're very concerned about. But we don't really have a baseline of where to jump to as far as making further adjustments than we have. We have been planning for escalation of around 3% per year, which just follow on the construction cost indexes that we track. We track a couple different models for that to kind of know where that's at. But until we really see some of these bids and these bigger projects we have coming out, I don't know that I can give you a really valid answer. We're
Proceed with caution.
we are proceeding with caution. Thankfully, the revenues seem to be somewhat keeping pace with some of what we could see with escalation and cost, but we don't know the answer yet, at least from the city standpoint. I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I'll just add, we're seeing much of the same as Gail. And I think what our engineering consultants are doing is as they're putting together those current and more updated cost estimates, for our engineers' estimates, they're trying to accommodate that, which I think is part of the reason, at least from the county standpoint, why we're seeing, some of those engineers' estimates come in at some of those bid prices. So, as far as that, the other thing is, I was just at Colorado County's incorporated our annual biannual membership meeting, and that's really what other counties are seeing. It's really the roll of the dice, and it just depends. And it depends on the type of project you have as well. So, and what, in the area of Colorado that you're in. So it's proceed with caution.
I will amend and add one more thing from the city standpoint too, and you'll see this on some of the contracts. We do annual renewal for contracts for signal equipment, asphalt materials and things like that. We're actually trying to lock in our prices now for the entire year so we can have a lot better cost expectations on some of the things that we can manage or project ahead. The other things that we know that either contractors are doing and we're trying to do where we can, where it makes sense, and we see this Colorado Springs Utilities, is that it's common materials that we use routinely to buy more in bulk and actually take on some of that cost for storage and materials. So we have them available because the supply chain has been so sporadic in some manner. So those are ways that things that we're seeing in the industry to help with some of that cost containment. But again, I think ultimately we have to proceed with caution.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a long-term fiscal planner, the phrase of when is this bubble going to burst? Because some of the trends are counterintuitive. People unemployed shouldn't have the money, and yet we've got the sales that are driving the revenue, and it's just counterintuitive, and you wonder when they're going to balance themselves back out and when that trend's going to level off. And it's an unknown, but you kind of have to say it's coming. It's just when, as any stock increase or any of that stuff self-corrects eventually. But let's enjoy it while we can and get some stuff done in the region. So great question. Beth?
Okay, any other questions? No?
All right. You want to go over the budget?
Yes, so turn to page 17 in your packet, and that explains what we're doing here. Normally, we wouldn't bring the budget back to the CAC at this point because we were already got it approved last month. But we are adding $12 million to the sales and use tax revenue figure from 138 million to 150 million. And we brought this up to the board last month. They like the idea because we can then go forward and like Gail and everyone else can order the kind of raw materials and other contracting that they can do earlier for this next year. So we added that, and that took a reserve adjustment of 1.2 million out of that for a net of 10.8 million that goes into the budget. Now, another difference between this budget and the one that you saw last month is that we've added Calhan. And over on the right-hand column, furthest to the right, is number 15, and that's the town of Calhan. And they're receiving 57,242 of maintenance. Now, they won't be receiving any capital until the capital renewal, but that's another difference. So that's pretty much it. Calhan's memo is on page 59 of your packet. And if you want to ask any questions about the budget, we have a couple people here who might be able to tell you what the differences are in the city and county's budget.
The question I had from the member governments that are here, this is a positive impact and there were no negative changes by adding Calhan and the money to what we reviewed last month. Is that a fair statement?
From the city's perspective, yes.
Same from the county.
So yeah, this just kind of came up during the board meeting, or Bev and them brought it up as, hey, we've got this extra money. We got it now with the supply chain issues and other stuff. Let's go ahead and disperse this and get it out there ahead of time. And the board approved it. So,
well, one of the things too to consider is, so right now revenue is running way ahead of the 138 million. But even if it doesn't run ahead of that for next year, we're going to have a good size carryover from 2021 mid-year. So if it doesn't run ahead, we just offset it with the carryover at the mid-year budget amendment. So there's really, I don't see very much risk in adding it now so that they can plan for next year earlier.
any comments from any members of the CAC at this point? Okay, Rev, did you have a question?
No, it calls for a recommendation. I move that we recommended the budget as amended to 150 million and recommend approval to the board from the CAC.
I second.
We have a second by Tom. Any other comments from any of the members online?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, on page 62, just another, I noticed there's just a typo with the allocation of reserve balance. Calhan is not on there.
Oh,
That's just
you're
a
right.
typo. It shouldn't hold up the motion or anything, but it's just a typographical missing.
Yeah,
Calhoun should be there
they
for-
would be allocated a little of the maintenance.
Right.
reserve. Okay,
That's it.
Thank you. Seeing no other requests for comment, do I have a motion to, or we have a motion and an approval. So all those in favor of approving the motion to recommend the new budget to the board, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Beth.
thank you.
Member governments, go spend the money now while we got it, right?
Yeah, really.
All right, item number 7, capital maintenance and transportation contract, City of Colorado Springs.
Hi,
Thank you,
Yana.
Mr. Chair, member of CAC, Gail Sturtevant, with the City of Colorado Springs. The city is bringing forth 7.
I'm sorry. Can you hear? I was actually zooming with, oops, hang on, sorry.
Please mute.
Thank you. So we're happy to bring forward 7 contracts for CAC's consideration, and I'll walk you through each of those. And if you have questions as we go through, please let me know and I'll try to address them as we do so. The first contract is to provide signal poles. This is in a total of up to $1 million based on available funding and appropriations that would be split between the Roadway Safety and Traffic Operations Program, which is the capital funding, and a traffic signal maintenance project. Again, for the contract would be up to purchase up to $1 million worth of poles as needed for these capital and maintenance needs. These prices were secured for these signal poles based through an RFP process, and that goes to Valmont Industries. Any questions on that particular contract?
Is that, how many, I've never seen this come through before, looking for traffic poles, for instance. Is this more than a year's supply of $1 million worth of these poles, or?
I think it's much less than a year's supplies worth of poles. So these poles will be purchased, so they're again pre-priced for us to be able to go in and need it. So when city staff goes and does a maintenance project, or if they happen to be doing like an intersection safety improvement project, that they could get these poles and go in and install them as needed. And Todd may be on, able to answer. I don't know the price per poles, but roughly an intersection build, a full intersection is about $250,000. And I would say bulk of that cost comes from those poles and the full manufacture and the foundations associated with that.
Should have been in the pole business.
Right. And did that answer your question, or would you like more detail, Tom? All right.
Yes, I'll withhold my question on the poles about the spikes that you use to climb the metal poles with until we get to the bucket truck. So no. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. The city's second contract is for roadways. Again, it's similar to the previous one. That would be split between capital and maintenance, with the portion going to the roadway safety and traffic operations, and then the other portion go to traffic signal maintenance. And so this award, I did an RFP, we got 8 respondents. We selected 5 vendors based on their pricing and for the equipment needs. Some of these equipment that's in here was not covered in that CDOT contract that we talked about a few months ago, and also that CDOT contract that we talked about a few months ago that we can leverage the better pricing. That expires mid-year and gets recompeted again. So this gives us a bridge if we need to. So we have our own prices established with these 5 vendors to provide supplies. So you can see on the spreadsheet of those 5 vendors, roughly what equipment they'd be providing, and the anticipated amount of the contract value, again, based on appropriations and approved purchase requisitions as needed for that equipment. Any questions on that particular item?
That broom. I just saw a brand new broom unloaded off the truck and it started working.
A broom or a boom?
Broom.
You get push broom?
Yeah, no.
No.
This is how they put it. It was literally, I want to see, It was two side streets that they were doing. They just cut the curb and gutter and
Reb, we
Yes.
can't hear you.
Thank you. Somebody remind me to turn on the microphone. I can hear me. I just saw a broom unloaded, and I mean, it was literally brand new. And I didn't see a broom listed as a piece of.
You mean like a rotary broom that?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Street sweeper,
Street sweeper, okay.
powered.
That may be owned by the contractor doing the curb and gutter work.
I would suspect so. We do have some street sweepers, but that's nothing that we're talking about for contracts
It
today.
was literally where you were putting in curb and gutter prior to doing chip
The
seal
paving.
or whatever.
Yeah, then
And
that
it's
likely
lit-
was the contractor's piece of
I remember
equipment.
now where it was. It was at what used to be the Penrose Hospital, Community Hospital,
Academy and
Academy, and
South
just
Circle-
south of.
South Circle Drive.
no,
Carefree.
South of Carefree.
yeah, if you would like more details, I could try to figure those out for you, but that's not part of the contracts we're talking about today. And
No.
we have not purchased a new sweeper to my knowledge.
Oh, I just saw a brand new sweeper and I didn't know who paid for it. I didn't consider the contract.
All right, the city's third contract is to put the contracts in place with 6 different vendors for rental equipment to provide street maintenance activities. Again, that all went out through an RFP and we selected these 6 vendors to have equipment available as needed for staff for maintenance activities. As you're aware, the city's operations and maintenance does have some in-house staff that performs some of our maintenance activities. And we have some equipment, but there's several other pieces of equipment that we don't have and then we get as needed on a rental basis for short-term needs. Any questions? I think I'm done. All right. Anything else, John?
No, the asphalt material, I got a question.
That's the next one. All right. So moving on to contract number 4, asphalt materials. So we go out and get bids for asphalt materials. The city did select 3 vendors to provide those supplies. We want to establish contracts in place for a maximum value of up to 500,000 based on this and approved appropriations. And those get ordered as needed to perform work by the city's in-house crews. And then what's your question?
Just a
Jim?
question on the difference between the 2 Martin Marietta. One of them has 85, 87, and is that just a difference in the mixture?
They're different asphalt mixes.
Right, okay.
Different oil content and
Right,
aggregate mix.
okay, that's what I assumed. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on to item number 6. City is looking to replace an aged piece of traffic maintenance equipment, a bucket truck that they, again, I think it talks about in the memo that we have some aged equipment, but we're looking to replace it with a piece of equipment that has more storage so we can take more materials onto job sites. And it also has a dual bucket. So we can actually have 2 folks available working at an elevated
Excuse me,
level
Gail,
with the signals.
did you skip over? item
Oh,
number
I did.
5,
I
Union
apologize.
Boulevard
Thank you.
Road
I appreciate that. No, I apologize. I shouldn't have been sitting right
I
here.
was looking at my paperwork and I'm going, I don't see anything on.
No, I apologize. Let me back up to contract number 5. Thank you. So the next one is a change order. It's for the Union Boulevard Bridge Maintenance Project that goes over Templeton Gap, and there is a vicinity map provided in your packet. We brought forth a contract for that maintenance work. I believe it was 2 months ago, and as they've gotten in there, they realized that there is actually a lot of additional scope on the bridge maintenance component of it. And then both traffic maintenance and the city's Parks Department and their Trails program looked at this as an opportunity to bring some money to the table to expand on that project and add in there. So for the traffic standpoint, they're adding a eastbound Acacia into southbound Union acceleration lane. If you're familiar with that location, it's where St. Mary's High School sits. When that side street jumps in there onto Union Boulevard, just kind of to the north of the Templeton Gap crossing. So they're going to be putting an accel lane in there to help with traffic operations in that location.
That acceleration lane will be good. I've gone
Yes.
through there sometimes when, somebody's pulling out of that side road and they have nowhere to go and they just pull right out in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah, so they, They saw this as an opportunity to fix a much needed problem there. So thank you for that. And then, Parks has been looking at doing some paving and work on Templeton Gap. The Templeton Gap Trail is on the A-list project. So far Parks had not expended the money for that program. They are taking some of that money and helping with adding basically bike facilities on the bridge, adjacent to the bridge that we were going to be doing. So we were already having to do some pedestrian facilities there. So we're going to be adding onto that. So we have bike structures on that bridge while we're doing that work at the same time. It was an opportunity for them. And then it sounds like they're going to be using the rest of their money to do some paving on Templeton Gap under a separate contract in the future. They did not add that onto the project just from a cost standpoint and preparedness for that. So that work is a change order. In aggregate, it totals $1,446,679.75. And that goes to Wildcat, and it is split 3 ways between bridge maintenance, traffic maintenance, and then that Templeton Gap Trail project. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, just a question that the concrete culvert, I guess referred to as a box culvert, CBC under Union. Sorry, my mother. Underneath Union, they're not replacing that culvert. They're
No.
only doing the surface area up to the top of that in that area.
Yes. So what they do, and this is actually one of the techniques we've been doing for bridge maintenance in general in the last few years that we're finding very effective, is that they're basically uncovering the top of these concrete box culverts, and they're providing waterproofing. It really, if you go and watch and do it, it's really like a thick tar that they're really putting on top of these membranes that they get brushed on. And then they build that base course and the decking back up and put the road back in place. And we're anticipating that to give us those structures about another 35 or plus years of life extension on them.
Yeah, that's a huge floodway through there. And I'm assuming that's to kind of take stuff coming out of Palmer Park and this will build up coming down through there or that in that area. But there's they've done it. They're doing a good, I've been through there numerous times and seen it down to the top of the box, but I wasn't sure whether they were digging into the box itself.
No, they leave the boxes. They may, and I think in some cases, if they found some surface damage, they would repair it. But so far they haven't heard that being the case. They're just building up from there.
Great, thank you.
All right. Any other questions on that one? Then I'll go to the bucket truck. All right. The City 6 contract is to buy that new specialized piece of traffic maintenance equipment, the bucket truck that would be replacing an older piece of specialized equipment that the city has currently in its fleet, bringing it up to a better standard, more modern standard in one. And it also gives us some efficiency that will be built into it. With additional materials be able to be stored on the equipment itself, and then be able to have 2 workers elevated working on a signal at one time. So that crew right now, from a city staff standpoint, we have 5 personnel and 1 supervisor, so for a total for 6 city staff personnel. And then we have 3 temporary personnel, and those get paired with city employees. So this will give them an opportunity to have 2 hands up there working on the signals at a time. So we're hoping that not only to replace an age piece of equipment, to actually have more efficient operations as they're going out and doing signal maintenance operations. Any questions on that particular contract?
Tom?
I'm assuming that there are probably some industry standards based on numbers of lane miles or intersections or something that talk to all of these issues of how many of each types of equipment you should have. Or is it more of a management call?
But everyone, I think every jurisdiction probably makes a level of service decision on how that staffing and equipment is brought in-house. The city is actually quite lean on any staff and equipment that we have to provide signal services. And we're very, I guess, thoughtful when we go and add equipment, or thoughtful when we add staff, and we have to provide a lot of justification for it. Sometimes we do get staff with the level of service is being asked to be increased for certain things, but I don't know that there's actually an industry standard that I've seen it. You could probably find some rule of thumbs if we were going to look at it, but I can tell you that the city's relatively lean on that. And we would not be increasing personnel. We would be replacing one piece of equipment and just anticipating more productivity or more efficiency based on that.
Joan?
Gail, I would say, having been on the county hack, when you're getting to 17 and 20 years of age of service, I remember on the CAC or on the hack acronyms, when the guys were actually making parts, jerry rigging parts to keep equipment going. So, you know, when I would think that at 17 and 20 years, we've all kind of gotten our money's worth out of that piece of equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even talk about that portion of it, but you're absolutely right. That is correct.
Yeah.
A very typical standard is there is a maintenance threshold per price of the vehicle. You reach that, it's not economical to do it any
Right.
longer. And
Then again,
And-
there is 3D printing of metals now, so.
yeah, get a printer now and print a new part. Yeah. But just for some of the newer members, years ago in discussion, the RTA will only consider purchasing specialized equipment versus standard city vehicle kind of thing. So we don't do pickup trucks anymore and that kind of thing. So it's specialty vehicles that are used to carry out work approved by the RTA. So that's the reason you don't see many of these. But in this case, that falls into that specialized category. And the city had provided an inventory of those items over the years and maintains ones. And so just for background information. So. Okay. Reb?
What is different about this bucket truck versus not its age, but what is different from a standard bucket truck? I know.
Well, I think this is the standard bucket truck now. Again, but as time has gone on, there's been evolution in the industry on how crews are going to go and perform work, whether it's a safety standard, whether it's an improvement in equipment. And this is the standard replacement. So if you were able to do an apples to apples comparison, it would be that case.
Joan?
Reb, well, I appreciate that your microphone is on. The microphone isn't anywhere near your mouth, and so therefore I cannot hear. So please accommodate me. I got new batteries in my hearing aids.
You turned it off.
Now you turned it off.
That's okay. So thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to move on to the 7th contract unless there's additional. Okay. The city wants bringing forth the 7th contract is for MV5 to continue to support City of Colorado Springs for delivery of PPRTA projects by providing the management and engineering and construction management support for capital projects and really supporting a lot of our bridge maintenance activities. Procurement office has asked for the potential for some on-call procurement assistance underneath this contract. So that is included in here, but right now it's not staffed, but they're just concerned about the volume of contracts we're going to have coming up and have asked to at least have some provisions for some additional help. If you recall, this contract was recompleted in 2018 by the city. The base year for this contract was 2019 and it has 5 option years. This would be the 3rd option year under that activity. The amount would total $2,493,913. Any questions on that particular contract?
So the change from what used to be called bridge inspectors to senior level project inspectors is not just semantics. The old contract always said bridge inspectors, and then we kind of got into that a little bit.
Well, I may have changed that, but I mean, we have inspectors that do both. So we have them go out and do construction inspection on the city's behalf on capital work that's being done under PPRTA. And then we also have them go in and do inspections on bridge work that's being done, particularly the bridge maintenance. So they actually split their time. So they've changed the name, I would suspect over time. I'm not sure exactly what the explanation was before, because they're doing capital work and maintenance work based on availability. And we do a staff leveling plan with ND5 to make sure we're getting maximizing those inspection.
Originally, there were also statements about them negotiating contracts on behalf of the city. We kind of took some umbrage
Yeah,
to that.
and they help us with a lot of that coordination, but I have to tell you, I'm sure, I think you guys probably figured this out in the last year or so, that all those contracts I see now, and then if it's a larger contract in particular, I'll be involved in those negotiations. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Gail? Okay, thank you. Oh, do we need to, do I hear oh, wait a minute. Joan, I'm sorry, go ahead,
I was just going to make a motion if you would.
please.
Would move positive recommendation for the city 7 contracts as presented.
Second.
Krebs, second. Joan, a motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none online or otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, all right, county.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairs, members of the CAC, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County Engineer. We have one item for your consideration today. It is a contract amendment for our Beacon Light Road Improvements Project. Earlier this year, we came to you with a contract amendment to add, another phase, which was engineering final design. And we are further along in that process and have 90% design plans, and are now asking to add in additional contract consideration for right-of-way plans and then the property acquisition services for the phase 2 of the project. So that amount is about $508,000, and I appreciate your consideration for that. Happy to answer any questions.
Hearing none, I move for approval of the county
Second.
contract number 1 that was just presented by Jennifer.
Second, Joan.
Okay, we have a motion for approval from Larry and a second by Joan of the county's contract. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none online or otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Not hearing, thank you both ladies. Transit. Item. What is that? 8A.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit with your monthly transit report. So for the month of October, we provided just under 149,000 trips on our fixed route local services. We are somewhat down from October of 2020, just shy of 12%. We're still operating on a Saturday schedule during weekdays. We're still being impacted by the driver shortage. We actually are seeing a little bit of improvement with the number of new recruits coming on. So we're hopeful that that trend continues. We just got a new class of 8 operators that started on Monday, so hopefully they'll stick with us through the process. But yeah, it's still something we're struggling with. We are looking to add one route back on Monday. That's Route 15 that operates along Fountain Boulevard down to Cheyenne Mountain Center at Lake and Manitou. So that's a service that hasn't been operating for the past several months. So that's good news. And we hope it continues. For our ADA paratransit service, we provided just over 8,900 trips in October. That's just about 31% over October of 2020. For our specialized paratransit taxi choice option, this is a program that we restarted again this March. So it's still kind of ramping up, but we provided 93 rides in October. And that's up 47%, a little over 47% from September of 2021. So that's on a good trend. For our van pool services, we operated 7 vans during the month of October. One route was recently suspended at the end of September. But we're keeping that going. There were 37 active riders in October, with making 763 trips. And that's about an increase of 15% over October of 2020. So are there any questions?
Any questions for Brian? Good news, we're continuing to improve, and good news on the drivers, Brian. That's hope that continues.
Yeah, so do I. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Colorado Springs monthly. So the next two, 7-8B is the Colorado Springs monthly change order and property acquisition. Any question for City? Gail?
Mr. Chair, I just want to mention that you're going to see a new memo. We've started rolling out, and we're going to be modifying and updating here in the next month. It really gives a snapshot on what the future right-of-way acquisition look like for these remaining capital projects. So you see the first pass of the memo today. We're going to be refining that and working with the county as well on that for future months, just so you can see that in that snapshot for what we're expecting.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay, not seeing any. 8C quarterly reports from member governments, information only. Any questions for anybody? I would just personally like to thank the member governments and your staff for putting this together. This is a great report. And I again encourage members, even for once you leave here, knowing that this report exists. When you've got constituents in your neighborhood complaining on next door or this, that, or another, this is a great source of information. And there's a lot of work that goes into this by our member governments to maintain the quality and the accuracy of the information in this report. So I would just like to say thank you to the staffs and of the member governments for spending the time and energy to keep this up to date and maintain and provide this information to us. So thank you. Any questions?
I do have one question for Gail and probably Jennifer too, is how is the Briargate Parkway Stapleton Road corridor study going? And when do you expect to have a report available, even in a draft form? And possibly then when would, some meetings be held with the neighbors?
Actually, we've had 2 public meetings already on that study. I think we're expecting a draft here for staff review, and we'll have to talk with the vendor and see. I'll have to talk with staff and see if we have another public meeting scheduled or not. I'll have to see where that actually is and get you some more information on that. But we're actually pretty far along in that project and are looking to try and finalize that document so that we can take it to our respective through our respective public processes for adoption. So there'll be additional public meetings through that process.
Because I've had a couple of questions from people, especially those that live on, Briargate Parkway east of Black Forest Road. Because some of those people still don't realize that will eventually come through their neighborhood there.
Yeah, and we did an extensive public outreach and sent a lot of mailers for those meetings. So, yeah, I think that we will have a final draft, And, you know, we will be taking that through another public process through adoption. So it's not like we're at the end of the process and nothing else can happen. We certainly will have opportunities for additional input.
When you finish that final draft, will you present a copy of it here to the committee?
We really haven't done that in the past. We can make sure that the committee has, you know, the opportunity, and we can send out the information on that and post it on our website and provide the opportunity. But we in the past really haven't done that, you know, because most of the projects are really, you know, items that come before the CAC are really the contract items. But happy to make sure that the CAC and the board of directors has, you know, those opportunities for those public comment periods. And we have a website for that project as well.
And I just think it would be good because I, you know, heard from a couple of people I've talked to, and we don't know anything about that. There's going to be a major highway in front of my house.
It didn't come across their Twitter account.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, and especially with the COVID, I mean, I think that that's been, you know, a change, and you know, we've done some of the meetings electronically, and in some cases we've had an increase in some of those contacts because it's been easier for people to engage, you know, electronically or on Zoom or, you know, whatever platform that we have. In other cases, you know, some people who like to be in person at those meetings, it's a little bit more challenging. So, but I do feel confident that we will have through our public process, through adoption, additional opportunities. I know for the county, we go through the HAC. We usually go through the planning commission,
Right.
and then we also end up for a final for the board of county commissioners. So there's 3 additional opportunities, and we're working with the city to determine what their adoption process will be as we look at that master plan and an intergovernmental agreement of how we implement that study.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, with the members of the committees, we're finished with item 8. For item 9, we have John Leosato from upstairs at PPACG, and I would like to skip and go to item 9C out of respect for his time. Anybody have any problem with an update? John's in the middle of this, and I think it'd be valuable to hear from that. So without any complaints or hearing any, I'm gonna move on. John, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I was asked to speak for a few minutes on the federal transportation reauthorization. Hopefully, in your packet, you received the PowerPoint that we received from our national association. I think it had like 54 slides, and in there, I said these are the 7 that really pertain to federal transportation for roadways that I think you'll be interested in. So, Jess, if I could trouble you to put up the slide. So, yep, I will continue to chat while she gets it loaded up. But I just want you to all know, I'm not going to cover everything. That's why we sent you the whole packet. So that way you can come and ask me questions afterwards. And I am respectful of your time. So I'm going to only hit the highlights and allow me to do that. While she's loading that up, important thing to remember is in the last couple of months, well, let's give it more than a year here with the pandemic. There's been a lot of these bills that have sort of come through and have been relief bills or rescue bills or whatever, right? So, but what's been passed here recently is the actual infrastructure bill. So this is the bill that happens every 5 or 6 years, depending on what sort of agreement they could have in Congress. And it sort of sets the baseline of funding for transportation. So for those of you who have been around a while and are transportation groupies, right, you had ICE-T, T21, Faster, Safety Lou, MAP 21. And now we give you the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IJA. Yeah, that doesn't quite roll off the tongue like the other ones. But this is, again, the bill that over the next, and again, I apologize, I probably should have committed to memory before I got up here, but I think it's the next 5 years. It sets the apportionments for the different funding streams that are funded by the federal government. Those appropriations allow us to plan at the NPO level of what money is going to be coming in. But just because you have an appropriation doesn't mean it's real money and you can go out and spend it, because after you have the appropriation, the
Authorization.
yes, after you have the apportionment, so you know how much money you get, you actually have to get the appropriation that funds that. So right now, what was passed was this 5 year of appropriations and the apportionments, and then 1 year of appropriation. So we know we're good for 1 year, and we can plan moving out. So of the 54 slides or whatever, like I said, I grabbed about 9. This first slide was just sort of giving everybody a sort of a feeling for that. The infrastructure deal was, $550 billion as far as the infrastructure side of it is concerned for. And you can see how it's sort of broken down. The biggest block there off to the left is for transportation. And then there are other things that are broken down. And I think what's important for maybe our region, given that we have Park and Teller counties as part of the COG region, is that big chunk of money there for broadband. So to the extent we can put broadband in and allow people to participate versus via Zoom and other methods, we can take trips off of the road. So we have kind of a saying that the easiest trip to fund is to fund the trip that you never have to take, right? So if we can update our broadband infrastructure throughout the Tri-County area, that's going to be there. So that's a big deal, and we're looking forward to that. If I could ask you to advance the slide, please.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Would the existing 5G contract, would that money be, is that contract eligible to be paid for by part of that money, some of the 5G effort that's going on in the city? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay, that's fine.
Let me get back out of the weeds now. I'm just kidding.
That's fine.
So the, oh, wait, thank you. I think it's water.
You hope it's water.
This slide I sort of grabbed and put out there is, again, just to give you sort of a little bit of a breakdown of that 567 billion that's going to the US DOT. There's 351 billion for FHWA, which is federal highway, and 91 billion for the Federal Transit Administration. The one thing that you need to sort of take away, actually, I think you can go ahead and click to the next slide. I think it has the breakdown of, this is more, what else is in there besides transportation. So again, you see the broadband money for EPA to clean up stuff, renewable energy, that sort of thing. Again, I just wanted to point out that it's a sweeping bill that has more than transportation. But the next one, I think, gets us to like the 25% increase. Oh, sorry, next slide. Yeah. So here we go. So of the different funding sources that we receive here in our region, that second one, the STBGP, Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, you can see that got increased by 24%. So all things being equal, right now we get about $10 million a year in STP funds. So now we're going to get a little over 12 million a year. So it's a 24% increase. Then if you go down the slide, third from the bottom rather, is the set aside for TAP, which is Transportation Alternatives. These are funds that are set aside for sidewalks, bike paths, those sorts of things. And you can see that increases by 71%. So we're going to go from a little around 600,000 to about 1 million. So that's what it means for this region under this new bill, is there will be more money available through that PPACG process. If I could show you for the next slide. The policy changes again, the sub allocation which is the money that sort of comes down to the different MPOs, remains at that 55% level. Not sure that you need to worry about that too much, but it's going to expand the eligibility. We're still trying to figure out what that is. And I'll take this opportunity to let you know that as we're unpacking this bill and trying to figure everything out, we will probably have a workshop in January where we'll sort of, like we've done with other issues, we'll invite everybody to tune in on the Zoom, and we'll sort of break down all of the different fund elements. If we could go to the next slide. I think we're almost done. This is the one thing I wanted to point out, is that while this bill is great, and being a transportation guy, I like all the different things in it. However, just need to make sure everybody understands that a lot of this is being done with a $108 billion transfer to the Highway Trust Fund from the general fund. So this means that if in fact, whenever we sort of say, hey, the gas tax isn't funding enough, and we need to stop taking money from the general fund to supplement it, that's what they mean by that fiscal cliff. Now, all of a sudden, that fiscal cliff has climbed to $270 billion. So if for some reason the Congress or the president or whoever in the future says enough's enough, we're not going to subsidize transportation out of the general fund anymore, you got to stay on your budget. Whatever you get out of the sales of gas tax is what you have to fund. That means about $270 billion has got to get cut from our existing spending levels. So that's a cautionary tale, that if at one point somebody says, hey, enough's enough, we're not gonna do it this way anymore, these dollars that we're enjoying now may not be the dollars we see in the future. I'm not sure if I said that well, perhaps a little clumsily, but I just wanted to make sure everybody didn't get used to the free candy bars. Eventually, that Halloween candy runs out, and you got to go back to buying the candy you can afford. And that's the cautionary tale of what we see here. So we have funding, and we should enjoy it while we have it, but let's not base future years beyond this bill assuming the same funding levels. And I think that's the last one that I picked up. Next one, just in case I grab something else. Nope, and this is the beginning of his slides. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. If anybody wants to get any specifics on anything that I might not know now, but I can sort of look up later.
Richard?
Yeah, I've got a question. And will you flip the slide back one? At the very bottom, you didn't mention that the HJA contains a mileage-based user fee study. That happens to be, I think, that's for the highway program. We're talking about the vehicles traveling on the road. Okay. I was involved with that with the Western states, including Colorado, back under President Reagan. And what that is, it's the moving away from taxing gasoline to, in effect, saying keep an account of all the vehicles one way or another, anyone you own in your own home, and they're gonna have to know how many miles you've traveled, and that is going to be what you pay on. It's a very interesting thing. Back in those years, which was in the 80s, my office was in charge of policy for the Federal Highway Administration, and we came up with the mileage-based user fee for trucks, and that is now in effect, but it hasn't been applied to cars. But that's a very potentially, that's going to be probably, it might well be passed. I don't know.
Right.
It'll be controversial.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. At this point, it's a study, and there are things that are going on. Oregon, for example, has a user-based thing. It becomes really sort of the technology is there, right? They can, right? They know where you are all the time anyway.
You just put a transponder on your car.
Exactly, but it's a privacy issue, and so it's not a technology thing. It's a rights issue, and so I believe that study is going to talk about those sorts of things, and we'll see what comes of it. But certainly, the technology is there to move to a user-based fee where the transponder knows where you are, and it removes any identifying information, and you receive a bill of how much you traveled. Some people might like that, but I know of quite a few people that are very much opposed to that sort of thing. So I think that study really needs to get into the public acceptance of that methodology.
But it's to address the advent of the electric vehicles that aren't going to be using gas and whatnot. So you have no way to track that other than through some technology fee. But Rick, you had your hand.
John, a quick question. You mentioned the money that would come to PPACG, and then that goes out to the member governments via a competitive process at PPACG. Is there a separate pot of money that for competitive grants that's separate from the money that would come to PPACG that our member governments could compete for?
Yes, great question, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. There are more competitive dollars in this bill than we've ever seen before. So the current secretary will have the ability to disperse more money through, and again, I'm trying to remember all the names, but infra and build, right?
Yeah.
Gail,
So,
help.
yeah, we have Infra, Raise, and Chrissy are the three that we've had, and they're kind of legacy from the FAST Act previously. And there's several others, but a couple others that are going to be in particular from a transportation realm that are going to focus on bridges and culverts and replacement, but it's all discretionary. You have to compete, essentially put a pretty elaborate proposal together for each of those applications.
Right. So to put a finer point on your question, Rick, the funds that come into PPACG, there'll be about 24% more. And that when the jurisdictions want to compete for that through our process, there's more funding available there. The rest of the funds that will come in are on a competitive basis that the jurisdictions would apply directly to the USDOT based on the eligibility requirements and the application criteria to receive those funds.
So just a quick follow-up. So the workshop that you're planning to have in January, I assume you'll be inviting the member governments so that they can dive into the details and know where they can pursue funding in that separate pot of money.
Yes, we will invite, I think what we did the last time is we sent out the notice to all of the different committees. And then we also made sure that we send it to the folks at the jurisdictions that would have an interest. So yes.
Tom?
A comment and then a question. It would appear, based on this slide, that our legislative leaders at the state and federal level should have stood up on their hind legs when gas was $2 a gallon and raised taxes rather than talking about it now. Are any of my question, are any of the things in here that seem to be countering the state smog bill that they're trying to put through to stop building lanes? And this is sort of, here's more money to build lanes.
Little dichotomy there.
Yeah, well, and again, this is providing funding, but it also provides just because it's surface transportation block grant dollars, that's the most flexible funding that the feds basically have. So while you can build road lane miles with it, you can certainly do other projects. So you can do bike paths and other sorts of things. So it's really up to the individual region to sort of do what they want with that funds. So that's the federal perspective. Now, from the state perspective, the greenhouse gas rule, we're still waiting for that. I believe the State Transportation Commission will have a meeting in December 14th or something like that, and then, or 15th, and then they'll have the final rule by Valentine's Day. And excuse me, 2022, right? We're 21, yeah, right? COVID years, I age a little differently. So once we knew what those rules are and how the mitigation process works for the greenhouse gas rule, then we can determine how much capacity, if any, that we'll be able to build. So it could be, at a minimum, we know that we have to do more alternate mode type projects. We need to put more money to transit. We'll need to put more money to bike and pedestrian projects. That being said, we just don't know how much. So until we actually get the rule and we figure everything out, we're going to be flexible as we can be. So there's funds, and we'll be able to move funds with people around, and we just have to sort of figure it.
But the federal process will not be held up by waiting for the greenhouse gas ruling from the state.
That is correct.
Okay.
It is conceivable that you could have a project that you wanted to make application for to the feds to receive funding, but because that funding is federal and then would be required to be documented in our long-range plan, that you may not be able to go after those funds because of the state rules. But we don't know that for a fact quite yet.
And if I may, the reason we've asked John to come give us an update, and we've kind of had this on our radar, is not that it will necessarily affect RTA directly, but I think it fits into the bigger picture of regional transportation, and we're a slice of that pie, of which the RTA with the regional transportation plan, the long range transportation plan, the member governments with their list of things here, this opens up opportunities. And so I felt like that it was important for us to be aware of how this may influence our projects going forward over the next 5 to 7 years. And because we're going to get asked questions, well, what about all that federal money that was approved? Well, it kind of doesn't necessarily impact us, but yet it could, because it opens up grants that member governments can now apply for. And then the greenhouse gas issue is another whole layer of complexity on top of all of that. And that could influence any of that based on the region and their particulate levels and all of that thing. So I just felt like that while this doesn't directly impact RTA, it does and could be an influencer in our decision making as we go forward. And that's the reason I felt like that it was important for us to be aware of what was going on. Gail?
Mr. Chair, if I could please just add to another way that it relates directly to RTA is that all these discretionary grants have a local match requirement. Right. And it is a minimum of 20% in all these opportunities. You really have to be closer to that 50% to be competitive. So we've talked about, using our A-list projects in some of the programs or a new program in the future. We're going to need to be able to position RTA dollars to be competitive to bring those discretionary funds into our community.
John?
Well, now I don't know if I want to say what I was going to say, because it's a little different than what you had just said, Gail. So without contradicting Gail, because that's not my job, I would just say that one of the positive things about PPRTA dollars is it is much easier to get projects done, right? If you once you federalize a project, it used to be back when I was younger, maybe you'd add 20% onto the cost after you were all done following all of the federal rules and regulations. It's probably more. It's probably 25% now. So to the extent you can have projects that are not federalized, the public is actually better served and get more quote unquote bang for their buck, because money's not wasted on some of these regulations and things, this bureaucracy, but rather they're getting 25% more projects for their dollar. So to that extent, the PPRTA is far more efficient. And to the extent you can have projects that are fully funded PPRTA projects, you're far better off, especially since the rules will continue to, when you have the federal dollars, even if the feds don't change their rules, as we've seen with the greenhouse gas, the state does have the ability, they are fully within their legal rights to change their requirements that sort of ride on top of that federal money. So to the extent you can have predictability of, if you're going to do a 10-year PPRTA plan and you want to make sure that you can deliver that, it takes out all of that risk involved with that. And again, I'm not trying to disagree with you. I
100% agree with you. But there are some big ticket projects we're out there. And I've mentioned, the Christie grant the city just applied for. We just applied for just preliminary engineering for that Tejon, Nevada, and then the Shooks Run bridges. But that price tag right now is $86.8 million in 2020 to complete that work. So that's not something that RTA can have appetite for, particularly if you look at some of the other projects and do a body of regional significant improvements. So there are the right projects to pick and federalize.
Just to amplify on that, for both, or amplifying what Gail and John are saying, it depends on the math per project. For example, if it's $1 million project and you can get $800,000 while putting in $200,000 of match, but the $1 million, because it's federalized, becomes $1,250,000. You just have to do the calculation to see if it's worth it or not.
Yep. So, John, thank you for your time. Any questions out there in Zoom land for John or on this subject? Okay, not hearing anyone. Thank you so much for your time, and just keep us abreast if there's anything major.
Yep, let me know if you need anything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, go back to item 9A, report of recent board actions. That memo is in your packet. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay, the RTA 3 matrix. Rick, you want to
Yes,
read
please.
that off?
Yes, please. There were 2 items that were unresolved and were discussed at the October board meeting. The maintenance of effort base year was the first one, and the CAC membership composition is the second. Why don't I take the first one? Maintenance of effort base year currently was set in 2005 by a board policy. The base year is 2004, set by a board policy in 2005. There's been discussion over the years about updating that. The board discussed it in October, asked me to refer out to the 5-member governments what their preference would be regarding updating or not updating. And the response back from the staff members that I've heard from is that the member government staff members are not recommending changing the maintenance effort base year from 2004. The CAC previously made a comment, I think it was in June, suggesting it be updated, but that's where we are. The CAC made its recommendation in June. The board asked me to refer out in October, and from the staff members I've heard back, they're recommending it not be changed from 2004. So that issue is up for discussion.
I'd just like to say that out of respect for Richard that brought this up and whatnot, I've looked back and thought about and read through things. There's a pro and con side of this discussion and this issue. And my personal belief is that we have to wait. There's no, in this case, there's no change that fits everyone. It's going to impact or could impact the smaller communities much greater than the larger communities. And I think we need to keep that in mind as we go into that discussion. I'm not aware of anybody's credentials on this committee that has the background that can say what that should be or the impact of what that might be on a community. That's to the specialist and the people that run those municipality governments. The impact on Rama and on Green Mountain Falls and probably Manitou are going to be different than they are with the city and the county. And so we're in a situation where I'm willing to go back to the board and say, we don't have a recommendation for you. If you want to change it, you tell us what you tell your members, board members, what you want that number to be. And let the board make that decision. I, as an individual and a member of this committee, don't feel qualified to make a recommendation. And it's like I said, without getting into details on you have to go back to the basic, remember the basic premise of establishing that was to make sure that when the RTA was created, that member governments didn't replace their existing maintenance budgets with RTA funds. And as long as they're not doing that, does it really matter what year it is? I'm not qualified to make that decision. But some member governments' maintenance budget hasn't changed since 2004. And so others have. And so it's a complicated discussion. During the recession, I know for a fact that the city and Mayor Bach eliminated divisions and branches and stuff and combined things together. So if you were to try to do a cost center to cost center comparison of what's being spent today versus what was being spent then, my guess, having spent 20 plus years in financial management and stuff, that would be virtually impossible to do a direct cost center to cost center comparison. And so there's just been other changes that go on. So it's a complex and complicated discussion. And so I would have to ask myself, we've had opportunities now to discuss this more than once. I guess my question would be, so what is the impact of having 2004 versus a newer year? The purpose is we're not replacing maintenance money with RTA money. And so we are where we are unless the board makes a hard and fast decision and says, we're going to do it, figure it out. But that's where I stand as a person. I know that there's some disagreement, but Tom, Richard had his first hand up first.
I think, Tom, did you let Tom speak first?
Okay.
I think what you've dealt with and what you've laid out are the facts, that some budgets don't change. And of course, the way I read that then is that it has no impact on them if we change to a new year. If their budgets don't change, it's immaterial. My problem with staying with 2004 is a perception issue. We survive based on our credibility with the taxpayers. We do a lot of great things. I would tell you that the nuances of whether it's a 2C project or a PPRTA project probably are not perceived by the people we serve, or whether it's a CDOT project for that matter. They don't read the signs as they're driving past it. They just appreciate the fact that it was done. They think about this about every 10 years when it's time to vote on it again. And if anybody were to read, and I think some of us, the fact that everybody in this room is a volunteer means that we actually do our homework. If one were to read the ballot measure, and they would look and they would see a 2004 date as our reference point for continuing to stay above that level, I would think it would make them go, that's pretty weak. That's a weak argument on behalf of doing this again. Because again, they're not perceiving what's going on, what's happening from this. At the same time, they're not, I don't think, perceiving the fact that every dollar they spend contributes a penny to doing it, because it's become background noise for the taxpayers at this point. I think it's a perception issue. I don't think it would be a problem. I think if we go back and take a look at the population from 2004 till now, and you see this huge population gain, everyone's budget has had to expand to accommodate that, with perhaps the exception of some of the smaller communities that have been stable in their population sets. But as you made the point, and I think probably a common sense point, may not have been actually checked for fact that their budgets haven't changed much. So that's my issue. It's perception. We survive based on our perception of being an honest, good organization that's doing good things for our citizens.
Okay.
Joan, why don't you go ahead?
No.
Okay, well, first of all, we are on record, I believe the vote was 12-4, that this should be done. We passed an affirmative. Am I not correct?
Yeah, we did make an initial recommendation to change it, yes.
All right, and I certainly trust that there's no need to take an additional one. The board has directed the staff to do certain analysis. In El Paso County, both staffs, I don't know beyond the city and the county, what sort of staff work has been done. But I do know that I'm sure that Colorado Springs staff is responded, is in the process, or has done, or will do, at the meeting next week, present to the board what they have looked at and the various implications of moving forward to certain years. And I'm sure Jennifer has done the same thing. Jennifer asked, I know that she has asked that Tom and Larry and myself and Dave to comment back to her on our thoughts on that subject, and not to talk to the others about it. She wanted independent positions, which is fine. And we have done that. At least I did it. I'm sure the others did it. I've not tried to ask them any questions. I'm not asking them today. But the point Tom made is one of the basic, if not the basic point. If I wasn't a highway person and I read the ballot and I knew enough to say, all they got to do is go back and keep this maintenance of effort, which is a good thing. I know enough about that. but I'm not a highway guy. But it's 2004 and we've increased. It would have been about 35% to help, but now maybe it's 45 or 50%. And that's what you're going to do. And that's what would test the credibility. If anybody looks at that, and the example I gave to Jennifer is the one, Lord help us if some reporter or like on the Gazette found out about that or read that, I would hate to see what would happen to the vote. And that's what's most important. How do we get the citizens in this area that belong to the PPRTA to vote for it? I'm going to vote for it regardless of what is done on this, but I'm a highway person. But if I were not a highway person, I might vote against it. I probably would vote against it if I saw that particular thing, because it tests the credibility and the honesty, I think, of how we do our business. Thank you.
John?
The microphone. I appreciate all the comments because perception and honesty is something that is very, very important to me. However, having thought about this over a while, I concur with Jim's comments. I don't know that I know that I am not qualified to pick that base year. And I really think this is something that is beyond my personal abilities as a member of this commission. And therefore, I'm not comfortable making a recommendation and think that this really is a board action decision and they've got to do the hard work.
Okay, so first of all, 2004 is not mentioned in the ballot measure. It's a board policy, so it's not part of the voter approved initiative. One. Two, we don't have any data to change our previous recommendation to the board. There's been no new information that's been presented that we need to vote on today. We have made a recommendation. That's up to the board to decide what they want to do with what the recommendation we've made. So I don't, Rick.
Oh, go ahead and finish.
No, I don't, there's no need to take a vote here. It's just that we've already made a recommendation. I don't see any information to force us to change that recommendation at this point. And we need to defer back to the board of what they want us, or they need to direct their member governments, their board of directors and their staffs, not the CAC. We're not the qualified person to make those recommendations in terms of what the impact and what that change should be. We've done that already, in my opinion. Rick.
Just three historical facts. Number one, the maintenance effort provision was not in the original ballot or any subsequent ballots. It's in the IGA between the 5-member governments. It did not specify a year. The year was picked by the board as a board policy in 2005. So neither the maintenance of effort provision or the year 2004 were ever in a ballot, nor should they be in the upcoming ballot. The vote, as I'm reviewing the CAC's recommendation on this was 9-4 as opposed to 12-4.
Larry?
I guess one, and I don't remember how I voted, when we voted on it. That's because of my advanced years, but, we won't get into that discussion. The more I think about this particular issue, to try and come back with something that was established in 2005, and now we want to make a change in 2021. Really, in my perception, and this goes back to what you said a few minutes ago, Jim, is trying to get the data, because so many things have changed between 2005 and 2021. In many cases, you're talking apples and oranges. So how do you really quantify it unless you get into a real detailed study? Looking back on it, it probably should have been made adjustments after, maybe like in 2010 and every 5 years or 4 years or something like that. But to try and go make an adjustment now, from 2005 to 2021, I think that's going to be real difficult. And I think our best procedure is to leave with the vote that we had and let the board decide what they want to do.
Rick Hoover? You're muted, Rick. Nope, not yet. No, still not hear you, Rick. There you go. Oh, one more. Go back. There you go. Nope. Microphone volume's not up. Still nothing, buddy. When we hear from Rick, we'll stop, but let's move on to the second piece of this with the CAC membership part of the memo. And Rick, I'm watching. If you hear something, just speak up.
Okay, I'll start on the second item that was
Okay.
referred out, and I'll stop whenever Rick Hoover jumps in. The second item was the composition of the CAC, and as you'll recall, the board had a concern relative to the board membership and the ratio of City of Colorado Springs, El Paso County relative to the smaller entities. When we first started in 2005, it was 3 board directors for the City of Colorado Springs, 3 board directors for El Paso County, and 1 for Green Mountain Falls and 1 for Manitou. So it's 3, 3, 1, and 1. Then when Rama joined in 2009, it was 3, 3, 1, 1, 1. And then a few months ago, when Callahan expressed an interest, then it was if their voters approved Callahan joining, then Callahan would get 1 director, and it would be 3, 3, 1, 1, 1, 1. So the concern on the board was that the ratio, the voting power, for lack of a better term, of the 2 larger entities, there was a concern that they were going to lose voting power to the smaller entities that grew from the original 2 smaller entities, then 3 and soon to be 4. So the board decided that, and they referred it to their respective city council and Board of County Commissioners, and those 2 bodies insisted that if Callahan and any other smaller entities ever joined, that the smaller entities would have to split 3 votes. So if Calhan voters didn't authorize Calhan join, then it would stay with Manitou, Green Mountain Falls, and Rama having each one whole vote. But if Calhan joined, then the four smaller entities would have to split 3 votes at 0.75 each. And then if we added a 5th smaller entity, that would be 0.6 each for the smaller entities. So the board and their respective governing bodies insisted on that change at the board level. The board recently expressed an interest in having a similar composition review for the CAC. Because if Calhan joined and got 2 members, then the same issue arose with the small entities having a more voting power on the CAC than and the erosion of the voting power of the 2 larger entities. So the board directed me at their October meeting, to send to the city and the county, the city for CTAB and the county for the HAC, to see if those 2 bodies would be willing to send a 4th CTAB and a 4th HAC member to the RTA CAC to balance off the addition of 2 Calhan representatives on the CAC. The response recently came back that CTAB did not care to add a 4th. So since CTAB and HAC would not be willing to add a 4th, then the flip side of that coin is, should the smaller entities then lose some CAC representation so that the 2 larger entities did not lose voting power. And that's where the idea was floated that possibly Rama, Green Mountain Falls, Manitou, and Calhan would possibly be limited to 1 each, 1 CAC member each. So that idea was floated at the city and the county level, and the response came back. It's in your packet. There's a chart that shows the city's recommendation, and in my cover memo, I've added some other options. The city's recommendation is that all 4 member governments, smaller member governments, just have 1 each on the CAC. I threw in the option in my cover memo that possibly City of Manitou Springs, particularly since Manitou is quite a bit larger than the other 3 smaller entities, and Manitou Springs CAC members have regular and good attendance on the CAC, that possibly Manitou Springs could keep its 2 current members. So anyway, this issue of a recomposition of the CAC is up for discussion, keeping in mind that the board would like the CAC's recomposition to be somewhat similar to what the city and the county insisted on the board director's composition.
Jennifer?
Just Rick Gale and I did have a discussion about this. I haven't had a chance to formally take it to our Highway Advisory Commission. Our next meeting is December 15th. But I did, from my staff standpoint, provided some input based upon what CTAB had come back on. And depending on how this discussion goes today, we'll decide if we take that formally to our HAC, or I just individually pull some of our members.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I kind of support the idea of Manitou maintaining 2 and the other 3 go to 1, and we take any adjustment in the at-large alternate positions, that we make any adjustment in there. But anyway, who's that, Tony?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say, one of the things that I agree with you, Mr. Chair, on the smaller ones going down to 1, maybe keep Manitou at 2. one of the main reasons also in CTAB when we were talking about this of really thinking that it makes more sense for the smaller entities to go down to one is because quite frankly, the smaller entities already have a hard enough time getting one. We have members on this committee that don't represent the area where they actually live just because the small towns are having a hard enough time getting members. So while they're small, they have lower populations, they don't get nearly as much money from the PPRTA, and their small population is also reflected in the fact that it's hard to find volunteers. So.
Okay, Red?
Question, this is addressed to Gales. They've made a statement. CTAB doesn't want to add person. Is this because you're having trouble getting volunteers? And I'm not making it critical. It's literally hard to get volunteers, period.
I would actually defer to our CTAB members if they're available to speak on that, but I don't believe that's the case. Some of the reasons why we've had a hard time getting members, there was actually not action on the city's behalf of getting CTAB members until recently, again, because CTAB's makeup was changing in and of itself.
Right.
So if you're aware of CTAB, before there were actually two committees, CTAB itself and ALAC, which was a formal subcommittee. Now they're being all combined back into one, and that makeup and that distribution by district and at large is all changing right now. It has since been set, and then the city now has an active call for new applications to fill in those positions. So I don't really believe it was that, but I just wanted to make sure you had that background why they're CTAB. So I would defer to the members. I am just the scribe and communicator in this case.
I understand. I hadn't used you.
This is Tony.
Just for your information, I do agree with Tony's analysis. It's hard to get a volunteer from Green Mountain Falls or Rama. And Rama's not even on the map in El Paso County, is it? But Calhoun would add an issue. And as far as Manitou, I don't know that they have to have any exceptional thing because they're not that large a population. That's my opinion.
Right. Just a process clarification. The existence of the CAC is in the original ballot. So that's where it states there will be a CAC. The composition of the CAC is in the CAC bylaws that are board approved. The CAC can recommend changes to its bylaws to the board, but the board has the final say on revising the CAC bylaws.
So having said that, do we need to take a vote on a revised membership at this meeting, or can it be done next month?
Your choice. But and I see a couple of hands. Calhoun probably is going to be appointing it since here's, I'll pass around the official vote count that that Calhoun voters did approve it. Calhoun is going to be selecting their board director sometime this month to be seated at the board meeting January 12th. Calhoun's probably going to be in the process also of picking its CAC member or CAC members. So the sooner that the board can decide if Calhoun just gets one or two, the sooner the better. So, but I can always ask Cindy, who's probably still on, to maybe limit the CAC selection from Calhoun just to be one, at least for now. So anyway, that's
I am still here.
That's
so I was gonna actually, I agreed totally with Tony. While Rama and Green Mountain Falls have two representatives right now, both Reb and Joan, no offense at all, but they're really more at-large representatives than the reps for the small towns. So speaking as a Rama rep, I agree going down to one would be not a problem. And in Calhan, I actually have someone in mind for the CAC, but just one. So it wouldn't be an issue if you guys need to wait. We could, appoint one. I was going to put it out. If we got two, I was going to put it out to the community, but I don't have a problem with it. We really only have one right now that the board would want to appoint anyway.
Okay, why don't Joan, did you want to say something? I see your mic on.
I'm wondering if this shouldn't wait until next month. Have more information.
Okay.
This is kind of, it wasn't I don't know. I think it's just something that we need more information.
Gail, you want to say?
No, I
Can I
guess.
ask also? Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Cindy.
I was just going to say, if we do decide to recommend one entity from each, how do we handle the two right now? So we'd have to think about that. And also, just for my own personal, Manitou Springs, while not large to Colorado Springs, based on the other small entities, they are quite a bit larger. I don't have an issue with them keeping two. So that's just my opinion.
Tom?
Cindy, perhaps, what is the population of Manitou Springs? Anybody know?
I believe it's over 5,000, right? Rick, 5,000?
Okay.
Something?
All right, so my comment here is, if Manitou stays at 2, then, and if Monument joins, they're over 10, then what do you do with them?
2. Yeah, see, that was kind of my thinking, was that it becomes a stratified thing where you, based on population, your representation is based on population. If you get away from the current model and you start stratifying it to 1, 1, 1, whatever, you got to balance that with the committee getting into 25 or more people, which you really, there becomes, it's manageable now, and we're doing great as a committee, but as we contemplate future growth, I think we could get too big. Personally, just because of the money and the size of the thing, Calhan, Rama, and Green Mountain Falls don't fall in the same category as the city and county, obviously, and I think Manitou is kind of in a category in between the two. But in order to take this, we would have to put together a proposal considering the alternatives. Looks like we've got a couple of different options. Greg, you wanted to say something?
Yes, if it's possible to defer this until next month, that would be my preference. There has not been an opportunity to discuss this with the government of Green Mountain Falls with the trustees. I would like to do that rather than unilaterally sit in this meeting and decide for the entire town what our position should be.
That's a good recommendation. And I was going to add that to answer Cindy's question about what do you do with the ones that already, it would be up to that entity based on the board approval of a recommendation that we make. So I would entertain a motion to
Mr.
move.
Chair, I actually have a.
Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
May I make another one more thing? We were talking on the population issue. I understand that Monument and Manitou are larger towns than Callahan and Rama and stuff, but you're absolutely right. If we're going to start talking about trying to apportion based on population, then the representation of Colorado Springs needs to be like 200 members comparatively. So obviously we're not going to do that. That's not the way that this committee is currently set up, and so while population matters, it's certainly not how we need to apportion it.
Okay. Oh, Carlos, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to concur with the comments that were made about deferring this till next month, unless I don't see any reason to hurry this. And the reason for that is I believe Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but the hack is going to be meeting next week. And likewise, even though the CTAB has already weighed in on this, maybe they may want to go ahead and consider any proposals at their next meeting, and that would actually be next week. Well, because they haven't met for the month, just because of the timing of the December meetings. They won't be meeting next month they won't be meeting next week for this month as well. So I concur with the recommendation. Let's go ahead and defer it.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, I'll hear a motion to maybe make this a two-part report to the board. One is for the first part of this having to do with the what was in their first part? Oh, maintenance of effort, that our previous recommendation has not changed. And with the second part of the memo, that we defer until further discussion until next month.
I'll so move that.
Okay. Joan,
A second.
you have discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is Gail from the City of Colorado Springs. I'm just, as a keeper of the minutes on this discussion, I just wanted to remind you that in previous CAC discussions that the CAC had completely deferred this discussion to the board. So that is still in the minutes. I will go ahead in a minute, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. And then the board may still take action on Wednesday, regardless if you guys choose to bring this as a topic next month. So I just want to make sure that that was clearly stated for the record.
Okay, thank you. And I
If you want
think,
to amend that at all, Rick, at all.
and I think that Rick, just as a, or help me remember as a comment to the board, is that the composition of the CAC is in the CAC bylaws approved by the board. The comment that you made earlier, as opposed to being directed. I don't know what the right wording would be, but let's mention the fact that the composition of the CAC is in the CAC bylaws approved by the board, if that's what I understood you to say. Okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all for your time and discussion. Let's go on to item 9E, election of officers. Rick?
Did you want to? Jim, we had 9D.
Oh, 9D. 9D. What was 9D? Did I overlook it? Sorry.
Just the appointment, reappointment process for the CAC.
Yes. Appointment, reappointment. So 9D, appointment, reappointment of citizen advisory committee members. The action is in your, the information is in your packet. We've got the 6 folks that are, their terms will expire on December 31st. Some of those is the first term of a 2-year or 3-year packet, depending on whether they're an at-large or an at-large alternate. Some of them that are appointed by the member governments, those member governments either need to reappoint them, and we need those letters by January, right? End of December.
The deadline is passed.
The deadline is passed, you're late.
A summary would be, I have heard from CTAB that Karen Asplin has been reappointed by CTAB.
Okay.
And I've heard that Dave Zelenak has been reappointed by the Board of County Commissioners to the HAC.
Okay.
And I've received a letter from Jim Godfrey requesting to be reappointed as an at-large member. So then there are question marks about Reb, Tom Viersba, and Jim Moore.
That's a big question mark, but yeah.
That might be a segue to something else.
Yes. So I'm gonna, I have heard from all three of these individuals, Reb, Tom, and Jim Moore. Is Jim Moore on? No. And they have indicated that they will not be seeking reappointment to the committee. And so I would like to take an opportunity to ask the two members that are present, Reb and Tom, if you guys would like to make any comments. Tom, why don't you go first?
I would like to say that it's been a pleasure. I will miss my annual Las Vegas Boulevard Royer Railroad intersection update. It's always going to be done the next year. And I think I saw in the packet this time it's going to be done next year. I also will miss the Highway 105 annual update, that it will be done next year. And it's in the packet of being done next year. So life goes on. Incredible professional staff, Rick, Bev, Jessica, that keep this thing moving along. For us, we just show up, do our homework, and then show up, but it's all good. Mostly what I'll miss is this group. Tremendous group of volunteers who do their homework, who represent whoever they're supposed to be representing well. You ask tough questions, you ask that the answers be followed through with further information in the future. It's been an absolute pleasure. This is America at its best.
Thank you. Any comments anyone else has for Tom while you're here?
Well, I'd
Richard?
just like to say, thank you, Tom, for your service on the board. You know, as a member of the El Paso County HAC, you've also been a very valuable member there also. So between those two boards, you've really accomplished a lot, did a lot of input. And I just want to thank you for your effort.
Richard.
I want to say that I have come to value Tom personally and professionally. And he is one of the finest men that I have known in my life. And any job where I was in charge of seeking people to employ, Tom would have been one of the, if I had the opportunity to select him, he'd be on any post I ever held. My life has been in transportation and many levels. And I have never met an individual who was not schooled in highways nor held highway post. But this man knows highways in many areas far better than I do. And I have never respected such an individual before in my life as I have in Tom. And it is going to be hard to lose him, I think, for PPRTA. I know it's hard for me personally. And I think he is not leaving the HAC, as I understand it. Thank you.
Joan?
Well, Tom, I have mixed emotions. I have learned a lot from you. And I really appreciate you and the number of years that we have served together, because you've always brought balance and perspective to any issue we discuss. On the negative side, the fact that you didn't ask for my permission to resign has me rather upset. That's very rude. But in all seriousness, Tom, thank you very much for all that you've done, and I consider you a very dear friend, colleague.
Okay, Reb, do you have anything you want to say?
And Reb didn't ask for permission either. But Reb, I mean, we've been on this for so many years now, from hack days and all of that. And your wealth of knowledge is just incredible. We've had our disagreements, which makes boards fun. We've had things that we've agreed with. And I just can't imagine you not being here next month. I mean, that just kind of boggles my mind. But I wish you well. And I thank you for your years of service.
I just like to add to all of those. I don't have much to add because a lot of them reflect my feelings as well. Tom, it's been a pleasure serving with you and Reb. That's one of the neat things about this committee is that we all do bring our perspectives and our backgrounds and our knowledge, and that contributes to the good of the whole in terms of what we're doing for the citizens of the region. And you will both be missed. And so thank you so much for what you've done, and please stay in touch. And I, like Joan and others, have considered both of you as friends. So thank you, Joan.
Jim, just one more comment. When I saw that we have the election in January, I thought, well, this will be fun. This will be easy to be a no-brainer. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've got a great leadership team, and now two of them bailed out on us. Rude, very rude.
Well, we can't forget Jim Moore. Jim is not going to return either. Jim and I served on the PPACG CAC years ago. He was a military rep to that organization for a long time, and Jim brings a wealth of knowledge too. And so all three of you guys will be missed. So I wish you the best as you go forward. Reb.
I would like to say a special thanks to Rick. I can remember sitting down in his office and being quote educated about the CAC.
You and I together.
Yeah, I think
You
we're
and I were together. We were in the same guy.
And literally, I had served on the HAC and two other committees for the county, and it's time. But the pleasure of working with Rick and Bev and Jessica has been a tremendous benefit to me as well as a pleasure. So thank you all. The reason I don't want to speak on anything other than that is because I know I'm going to have to face some people that I've been with in the county and are on the board. So I'm going to have to face the same music next Wednesday. Once in my life is enough. Thank you all. And if you take nothing from me, enjoy the pleasure of working with people like Jim, number one, and number two, what he says, I mean, at least. If you disagree, if you don't agree, don't hesitate to step up and speak out and do it with courtesy, not animosity.
Okay, thank you, guys. Okay, item 9E, election officers. Good transition, Joan. We do have election for officers next week, next month, I mean. And we are interviewing for new CAC candidates for the CAC. The subcommittee composed of myself, the board chair, the board vice chair are meeting on Monday. We have 3 applications to consider. Plus, I'm going to try to convince them to let me stay on. And so that we hopefully will have some names to go forward to the board meeting soon in terms of applications for new members of the CAC. And in terms of elections next week, next month, it's my pleasure to be on this board. I serve at the pleasure of the members of the committee. I'm willing to serve in any capacity at all that you deem necessary or how you would like for me to function. I am perfectly happy being a member. I am not opposed to continuing as an officer if that is so the of the committee. But I just wanted to say that how much I've enjoyed being on this committee, and I look forward to continuing doing that in whatever capacity the members choose. So going into next year. Rick?
I just wanted to clarify the prior discussion, excuse me, regarding the potential for Raymond, Green Mountain Falls and Callahan to be reduced to 1. If the board is so inclined, I would be advocating that Joan, Craig, and by the way, Ann Esch was appointed to fill Reb's slot as a CAC member from Green Mountain Falls effective January 1. So then Green Mountain Falls would have 2 members, but so I, to get to my bottom line, I would be advocating that if Rama and Green Mountain Falls and Callahan, just those 2 are limited to 1, that the extra members would be transferred to be at-large or at-large alternates.
I would appreciate that very much. I have really enjoyed being a member of this committee.
All right, is there any agenda topics for the next meeting? Anyone have any burning desires that we need to talk about? New Year's Eve party, yeah. Okay, any communications? Does anyone on the committee have any communications you want to share with any of the others?
Just Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Okay, everybody on board with that online? All right. Well, without seeing any or hearing any, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Reb, last deal. Reb did it, and Tom seconded it. All right. So we're adjourned, and everyone have a very pleasant, safe holiday and enjoy Christmas and with family. And so you choose. Be safe. Thank you all.
Yeah, I knew I'd be out.